on a sunny day in late June, while traveling in an open car, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie were shot and killed by a radical Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand set to motion a plan of revenge that would be the spark to the beginning of World War I. This single act, however, was not significant enough to be the sole cause of this destructive war. Instead, the decisions of the great powers following this incident showed a history of alliances and broken agreements, resulting in a divide between European countries. The Austro-Hungarian Emperor Franz Joseph launched an investigation into Franz Ferdinand's death. Their conclusion? That the assassin, Gavrilo Princip, was a part of an extremist group called the Black Hand, which was supported by the Serbian government. Uncovering this information led to Austria's aggression towards Serbia. The famous German leader, Otto von Bismarck, is quoted to have said towards his death, "One day, the great European war will come out of some damned foolish thing in the Balkans." He was unfortunately right. Following the assassination, diplomatic relations between Austria and Serbia broke down. Austria had maintained a close relationship with Germany through diplomatic and military ties. On July 23rd, Austria issued an ultimatum to Serbia, with the expectation that Serbia would refuse it. It became apparent that the Habsburg Empire and Serbia could no longer coexist peacefully. Seeking German support for their ultimatum, Alexander von Hoyos, an Austrian diplomat, was tasked with delivering a letter from Franz Joseph to Kaiser Wilhelm II. The Kaiser offered military support, responding that the Serbs must be dealt with, and soon. Germany gave its support to Austria on July 5th, offering the famous blank check. Austria now had German support for any military aggression against Serbia. It is clear that the war was fueled by Germany's support of Austria because of their shared Germanic heritage, military, and diplomatic ideologies. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was home to a diverse population with more than 10 distinct ethnic groups represented. The largest amongst these groups were ethnic Germans. Germans constituted roughly 24% of the population according to the Austrian-Hungarian census of 1910. While ethnic Germans were technically a minority within Austria-Hungary, they wielded a great political influence within the empire. They were entrenched in the Austrian parliament and government. German nationalist movements grew from this large group of ethnic Germans. Some political parties within Austria-Hungary, primarily Austria, expressed German nationalist sentiments. The German People's Party, German Workers' Party, and German National Party were all Austrian-Hungarian and supported German nationalism with Austria-Hungary. Pan-Germanism, the political idea that sought to unite all German-speaking peoples into a single nation-state, also received support from groups within Austria-Hungary. In addition to the great political power, ethnic Germans held positions of influence within the Austrian-Hungarian military. Ethnic Germans constituted 26.7% of the military, but 76% of the officer corps. With German being the command language of the military, all members of the military were required to understand a limited amount of it. Germans considered themselves as civilized and viewed Slavs, largely represented by Russia, who supported Serbia as barbarians. This position was held by groups of ethnic Germans within Austria-Hungary. The German Workers' Party was one such anti-Slavic group. German support of Austria-Hungary's response to the assassination of Franz Ferdinand was influenced by this shared Germanic heritage. The shared heritage intensified the connection between the leaders of these empires. Kaiser Wilhelm II and Emperor Franz Joseph played significant roles in the pre-war foreign affairs of their respective countries. In 1890, Wilhelm ousted German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, whose foreign policy was not aggressive enough for the Kaiser. Bismarck's goal was to keep the peace in Europe, allowing his new state to put down solid foundations and to eventually play a central role in the European balance of power. Through the appointment of chancellors who were simply civil servants with little to no experience in politics, Wilhelm was able to have a more assertive role in government. This enabled him to pursue his goal of assembling a German navy, one that would elevate Germany to the status of a world power. Wilhelm governed Germany's foreign affairs with less tact than Bismarck, exhibited through the Kruger telegram in 1896 and his visit to Morocco in 1905. This solidified Germany's reputation as an irritant to the great powers. During the pre-war period, Austria-Hungary was led by Emperor Franz Joseph, who had been on the throne since 1848. His reign started out in defeat, losing Austria's claim to Lombardy-Venetia following the Second and Third Italian Wars of Independence, and losing the chance to unify Germany under the House of Habsburg in 1866. Franz Joseph did not actually have any part in the development of the Serbian ultimatum after the assassination of Franz Ferdinand in 1914. The emperor had been on vacation at the imperial palace and rather than returning to Vienna, decided to leave the decision-making to his ministers. He received the ultimatum on July 21st, and although it surprised him in its severity and concerned him that the Russians would become involved, he chose not to question it and allowed it to move forward. On the surface, the two leaders did not have much in common in respect to their foreign policy goals. Where the Kaiser seemed to be more deliberate in his antagonizing policies, Franz Joseph's bad track record seemed to come from purely unfortunate luck. However, each leader was similar in the way they mishandled their country's foreign affairs, which isolated them from the rest of Europe and pushed them into each other's arms. Austria-Hungary and Germany have a shared history of diplomatic alliances, beginning with the Dual Alliance and continuing to the War Guilt Clause stated in the Treaty of Versailles. Before the ultimatum could be advanced by Austria-Hungary, they needed to rally support to ensure their victory when war broke out with Serbia. The blank check arrangement was different than past diplomatic agreements. Austria-Hungary was taking control of the dual alliance for their own benefit against Serbia. In the previous Balkan Wars, it was Germany who controlled the dual alliance. Austria-Hungary was beginning to assert more control in the region and was not consulting other states when issuing ultimatums. The Triple Alliance of 1882 was a military agreement that was meant to counter the growing force of the Triple Entente. The British Entente with France and Russia did not include a military aspect, while the alliance between Germany and Austria-Hungary included military support as a defensive feature until the blank check.
There is a huge difference between an entente and an alliance, because an entente does not have any military provision. And that, I think, is an important point to bear in mind. Whereas an alliance will have very likely military provisions.
The development of an alliance by Germany and its allies was done in response to the Triple Entente, even though they presented no military threat. The Treaty of Versailles presents an interesting connection between Germany and Austria-Hungary. Signed on June 28, 1919, exactly 5 years after the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, this treaty contained the guilt clause under Section 231, which stated that Germany accepts the responsibility of Germany and her allies for causing all the loss and damage during the war. The dual alliance was intended to promote peace, but Wilhelm's transformation of this policy turned a peaceful agreement into an unfortunate, powerful alliance system that Austria used against Serbia. The alliance network that had been developing since 1870 led to the connections between the great powers, especially between Austria-Hungary and Germany. This alliance had its foundations in their shared heritage and similar governing styles. Had these factors not been present during the July crisis, it is possible that this could have remained a regional war, rather than it evolving into an international conflict.